There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
Welcome back to another session of the Leadership Crucible, and today my guest is Jack Rives, who is the Executive Director for the American Bar Association. The rule of law allows for the judicial system to deal with crimes and is the vehicle for building the foundation of a just and organized society. Our guest today has spent a lifetime working on that. Jack received his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Law degrees from the University of Georgia. Following his graduation from law school, he began a 33-year career in the United States Air Force as a military attorney, or judge advocate, JAG as they are routinely called. He served as the Judge Advocate General of the United States Air Force, the senior U.S. Air Force attorney, and he was the first military attorney to attain the 3-star rank of Lieutenant General. On Law Day, May 1, 2010, Jack began his service as the Executive Director of the American Bar Association. Jack oversees a staff of more than 1,000 people and a consolidated budget of over $200 million, and he ensures the effective development and direct implementation of the association's strategic goals. Jack's full bio can be found in the notes for this episode. Well, hi Jack, and welcome to the Leadership Crucible. I sure appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you, Randy. It's an honor to participate with you.
Well, thank you. You know, we've talked in the past about are leaders born or are leaders forged from their experience? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I believe no one is really born into becoming an effective leader. You know, we all come from different backgrounds. Some people are born into better circumstances than others. Anyone is capable of being a good leader. It's a matter of learning the right lessons from whatever life brings you. And the most effective leaders are the ones who build on the lessons they've learned. They're true to themselves, and they learn how to work with others effectively. So I definitely believe that leaders are made from their experiences as opposed to being born into it.
You've probably seen a lot of different leaders come from different backgrounds when you were in the military, and probably in your role at the ABA as well. And what are some of the characteristics that you see that really elevate a person wherever they come from? I mean, what really drives them to, have that influence as a leader?
It's how they treat other people, and it's how attentive they are. One thing I've noticed with the good leaders are their ears work. You know, they know how to listen. They don't just talk all the time. They know they learn more when they listen. And so the effective leaders are the ones who work with people effectively, and they know they don't know everything, and they know sometimes it's best to get a consensus. You're always going to make better decisions when you've listened to other people. Sometimes the decisions you'll make are not going to be what the majority believes is best, but it's going to be what you, based on your experiences, believe is the best approach to a given matter. And if you're an effective leader, you'll be able to persuade people, and overwhelmingly, they're going to believe it was their idea all along. And that's really one of the secrets. Doing what you know is the best thing to do, the right thing to do. And those can be critical factors for any leader.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think one of the things that I learned as a young firefighter, and then as I was moving up through the ranks, was, I thought that if you really engaged full on in a meeting, the more you talked, the more influence that you would have. And as I progressed up through the ranks, I found that the less you talk, actually, the more influence that you have, because you gain more information if you just keep your mouth shut and listen to everybody else, because always good ideas flow out.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to be someone who's what is sometimes referred to as a spring butt, someone who's always going to talk on things, whether they really have something worth listening to or worth saying or not. The person who's going to be respected is the one who may be quiet most of the time, but when they speak, others are going to listen to them because what the person says is going to be valuable. So, yeah, when I was younger, when I was a junior officer in the military, I was of course outranked by people in my staff meetings, and most often I did not talk. I would listen unless it was a topic that I had particular expertise on. I might go through an entire meeting and not talk. As I became more senior, and especially as I was leading meetings, I didn't have the luxury of avoiding talking. But among other things, to show respect, I don't like to be late for meetings. My staff, whether it was in the military or at the American Bar Association, jokes that if I've got a meeting starting on the hour, that means they need to be there at least 5 minutes ahead of time. Rarely will I not be at a meeting when it's supposed to start, and rarely will I not start a meeting on time. It has to be typically someone who I'm talking to at the time and I need to continue talking to them causes me to be late, and I'll try to get word to the people at my meeting to let them know I'll be late. But it's a sign of respect to be there on time.
A follow up, I guess, to that in today's world of kind of the culture that we live in and the polarization that we're seeing today, and especially throughout our country, but actually worldwide. How important do you think it is from a leadership perspective to really focus on how you treat your people? I think it's really something that's sometimes lost at times by leadership today.
Yeah, it really is critically important, and that can be the difference between a successful leader and one who's not successful. When I start in a new job, I tend to tell people that I'm expecting three things of them. I want them to always do their best. I want them to always do what's right. And I want them to always treat everyone with dignity and respect. And if you do those things, you're well on your way to being effective, whether it's as a leader or at the highest levels or as a subordinate who also has leadership responsibilities. When I was in the Pentagon, one of my jobs was working with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And when I was first assigned to that job, General Colin Powell was the chairman. One night I was working especially late into the early morning hours. And when I came into the Pentagon, I was talking to the guard, and we were talking about some of the people who tended to blow by him as though he wasn't even there. And obviously that was not being respectful. I think it's important to know the names of the people who are serving you. I know the names at the American Bar Association in both of our main offices of our janitors and the people who do the service type work. They tend to be professionals who are trying their best, and we should show appreciation, and little things like knowing a name or asking about family can be important. When I was talking to the guard at the Pentagon, and we were commiserating about people who were less than respectful. He said, but then there are people like General Powell, who was then the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he said, General Powell knows my name. He knows my wife's name. He knows I have children and grandchildren. He said, sometimes when he walks in the building, he can do a little more than nod his head and make eye contact. Other times he'll stop or slow down, and he'll call me by name and ask about my wife by name and ask about the grandchildren. You don't have to know a lot to show that you care. And when you do show that you care, that, of course, can resonate in very large ways.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it also shows the value that you have for that individual, no matter what their rank is, so to speak, in life. Everybody brings value, and I think if you appreciate the value that they bring, they're much more likely to do a much better job for you. And creating that type of relationship is, really builds a culture in your organization, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You have a large staff at the ABA, two major office locations. You have people that are working all over the world, primarily remotely, and when we were going through the pandemic. But from a communication standpoint, as you've come through the pandemic with that many staff people and running multiple locations, how do you communicate with your staff, and how important is that on a day-to-day basis?
Communications is critical. Leaders should have a vision, and your vision is not worth much if you're not communicating that to people throughout the organization. And so I do cascading meetings, everything from weekly meetings with small key staff, weekly meetings with my larger direct reports, with the senior staff. I'll have a weekly meeting. And then I'll have quarterly meetings with what we call the deputy directors, which between our two major offices accounts for about 120 people out of 1,000. But I'll meet individually with each group in either our Washington, D.C. office or the Chicago headquarters, and I'll communicate directly with them. I always take questions, whatever questions people have. I like to hear the rumors that are out there. I've learned not to repeat the rumors because then someone's going to say, well, Jack said so and so. And I'll correct them and say, okay, Jack said that was a rumor and it's a bad rumor. But at the American Bar Association, we have 4 goals, and it's critically important that everyone understand those goals. The goals are serving our members, improving our profession, trying to eliminate bias and enhancing diversity, and promoting the rule of law in this country and around the world. And obviously, we could write books, spend hours talking about each one of those, but our staff needs to know that what they're doing is contributing to each of those. And when I talk to our members, whether it's the Board of Governors, which is 43 people, or our House of Delegates, which sets policy and is about 600 people, I will always refer to our 4 goals. And it's important for people to realize that's our guiding star.
Yeah, I agree. We went through a pretty significant value alignment process when in one of my departments, and we thought we had done a good job. We brought all of our senior staff in, mid-level managers, and everybody had agreed on a value set. We actually surveyed everybody once we outlined the 7 core values of the organization. And one of the things that we failed to do was to actually define what behaviors represented those values. And so we put the values out, but there was and my fault, but there was a lack of, well, what does that mean? And I don't know if you found that to be true in the military or in your current role, but I found that to be one of the things that I failed to do.
It is important, and it's the more values you have. You mentioned 7, and I mentioned in the military, whether it was within the JAG Corps or for the Air Force as a whole, my branch of the service, we had 3. 3 is certainly easier to remember than 7, but you're absolutely right. You need to cascade from the basic set of 3 or 7 or whatever it is to explain them. People need to understand them. People need to internalize them. And you do that with anecdotes, you do that with stories, telling how it's applied. And, for your profession as a fireman, there are a number of heroic stories that you can tell, and that helps people remember and internalize the 7 core values that you had.
So, it seems today that many leaders can never admit when they make a bad decision or make a wrong choice, and are more focused on how to post something quickly to kind of divert their attention or divert the attention away from what they did or didn't do. And how critical of an issue is that today? From your perspective.
You're not a good leader if you don't accept responsibility. No one is perfect. And if you admit when you make a mistake, you accept responsibility, your colleagues are going to respect you. Even the people who are not fans of yours will at least begrudgingly say at least he or she admitted when they were wrong. If something bad happens, then the basic crisis leadership skill is, first of all, apologize if you've done something really wrong, accept responsibility for it, investigate to see what happened, and let people know you're doing all these things and you're going to take corrective action so it won't recur. And then you do what you can to make it right among the people who were hurt, and you keep them informed about things you've done to assure it won't happen again.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so hard today for leaders to do that?
Because they're always in the spotlight. In years past, maybe someone would write an article about what you did, and maybe it reaches people a day or a week later. In most of what we're involved with, we need to be transparent. At the American Bar Association, I frequently tell people we're a member-driven organization, and members are entitled to know just about everything, and I'll be glad to explain to them why certain things either happened or are not going to happen, or why I don't support something or do support it, I'm glad to go into detail. The two exceptions are if the Board of Governors is having an executive session to talk about something especially sensitive, people need to understand I'm not going to talk about that. And when it's a personnel action involving taking some accountability actions against an individual, that is not the sort of thing that we would publicize. Other than those two areas, though, we're a transparent organization, and you gain a lot from that.
Yeah, I think a response of no comment or we're just moving on, and you don't say I can't answer that right now, but I will get back to you. I think just opens you up to speculation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. No comment is never the right answer. It's not the best answer, and it's not even the right answer, is what I would say. If you can't comment on something, you can tell the reasons why you can't comment. The producers of 60 Minutes love it when they try to interview someone and the response is no comment, because then people are going to think the worst. It's been a long time since I ever told anyone in the media or someone from another organization, no comment. I will tell people why I can't talk about it, and sometimes I don't reveal much at all. But I'm not saying no comment.
Yeah, because it just opens it up to, well, you have something to hide.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, it does. So, I was reading one of your articles I came across, and very interesting story. It was called The Fortune Cookie Story. It was about honesty. And can you tell us a little bit about that? I was fascinated by that.
Sure. I like to eat, and I like Chinese food. It'd be hard to find a type of food that I don't really like, but I like Chinese food all the way through. But one time I'd finished a nice Chinese dinner, had my fortune cookie, and the fortune read, "There are no degrees of honesty." And my first thought was, that's not funny, and I'm not sure what they're driving for. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that really did say a lot. There are no degrees of honesty. If you say a person is honest most of the time, then that's not a compliment. You're saying it's a dishonest person. If you're saying a person has a fair amount of integrity, again, that's damning them with faint praise. There are no degrees of honesty. You're either an honest person or you're not. And I would commend to everyone, whether you're in a leadership job now, or you strive for a leadership job, or you're in a position lower on the pecking order, you ought to realize that you need to be true to yourself. Your honesty is critically important. Your word really is your bond. One of the advantages of being in the military, I used to tell the new lieutenants who had gone through a training program, and they had their commission and they were going to be serving as judge advocates, military attorneys. I told them that as military officers and as judge advocates, they are members of two professions, but their honesty is going to be presumed. Unfortunately, there are a number of other attorneys and in popular media, including novels and other stories, lawyers are portrayed as too slick, dishonest about matters, really can't be trusted, have some hidden agenda. But I would tell the military attorneys, your honesty is assumed. And I've known very few military attorneys who lost that because they were not a person of integrity.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. So, coming out of the pandemic, another issue that I've read a lot about is that there's with employees that you're trying to recruit, they're really looking for value alignment with the with their potential employer. Are you seeing the same thing with attorneys that are interviewing?
I am, Randy, and that's why for the people on staff, they want to be in a place where they can take. We're a nonprofit. We're fairly well known as the American Bar Association. We've got an international reputation, so people are attracted to it. In some cases, they come to the job just to get it in their resume so they can use it for later job opportunities, which is fine, of course. In other cases, they stay with us for decades, and it's because they're in a place that aligns with their personal philosophy of life. Throughout the organization, I've emphasized training. I learned early on when I came to the ABA that if a person doesn't do the job effectively, but they weren't trained, then as the person at the top, it's my responsibility. On the other hand, if they don't do their job well, but we've trained them effectively, then it's their responsibility. So I tell people with a smile that I'd much rather be their responsibility when they were properly trained, that they do the job right that they've been trained to do. But the culture of an organization is important, and an organization that's committed to the four goals that I mentioned for the association, um, serving our members, improving their profession, helping people be treated the right way by trying to eliminate bias and enhance diversity, and promoting the rule of law in this country and around the world. Those are things that people can say, yeah, I'm on board for that. And then we do things, sometimes you don't realize it through every day, but we do things through the day, through the week, month, and year that reinforce those values.
Yep, very important. How important do you think role models are in your organization and in any organizations today?
It's critical. General Douglas MacArthur famously said, "You are always on parade." And everyone really is. People are going to make judgments based on what they see and hear from you at any and all times. Charles Barkley is a former professional basketball player. Now he's a commentator. And he had done something years ago where people said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You're a role model. And Barkley said, I'm not a role model. But the fact is, professional athletes, college athletes are role models. They're not always a good role model, but they are role models. You don't get to choose whether or not you're a role model. And people are going to look at how the people they believe they should respect are acting in given situations. I, I've worked for people that I greatly admired, and I've worked for people who I learned negative lessons from. And I call those negative lessons learned. And there are some things I do even today that I'll do because I worked for someone who I believe didn't treat subordinates, including myself, well because of how they did something. And I do the opposite even today. For example, it's easy to procrastinate on a variety of things, including performance reports. They're due at a certain date. I always have a first draft well ahead of time. I'll show it to my subordinate. I'll say, let me know if there's anything that's not true or something you believe I left out that's important. And then after giving them a fair chance to do that, I tell them I'll finalize it and I'm going to sign it on the day it's due. One of the people I worked for years ago, I worked for 2 full years, and my first report, that was a yearly report, was not completed until the second report was due. And he made excuses to me that I didn't make a big deal about it to him, but that's one of my negative lessons learned. I think about him in a negative way. So you are a role model. Even if you're not in the top leadership position, even if you don't think you're a leader, you don't get a choice but to be a role model. You're a role model to your family. If you've got children, to your children. They're going to do things because of what they see you do or not do in a given situation.
Yep. Yeah, have to lead by example, and I think as we had chatted with before, I think you're always first in and last out. Not only to work, but that's a phrase that we use in the fire service. You're the first company in and you're the last company out, and leaders eat last. Right?
Yeah, and it's one of the things that really does resonate. For a leader to defer to other people to do something as simple as eating is a visible thing. I've been in places where they want the senior person to eat first, but if you say, no, you folks go ahead, then people are going to, no one's going to complain that you defer to eating until they were able to get the food.
No, I think they appreciate that they don't have to wait for you. So, and I think it's also,
absolutely.
You're showing respect to them as well. So, and we talked, I think it was last week, we talked about a book, I think it was entitled, All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. It's really a kind of a basic leadership piece, actually. If you look at some of the things he wrote, like don't take stuff or credit that isn't yours or you've not earned. Don't lash out or demean others. Stick together, clean up your own messes. Share what you know and pay it forward with others. Say you're sorry when you need to. Give yourself permission to take a break and recharge. Listen to others, and you've hit on that today a couple of times. Treat others the way you want to be treated. things come to an end, and so accept that and be aware of wonder of what's going on around you. And, share some thoughts with that, because I think that, he's got some really basic philosophy there that I think every leader should take to heart.
I agree, Randy. And it was a clever title for a book. More importantly, the way the lessons were described is very important. And there are things you learned when you were young, that your parents taught you, some simple things like saying please and thank you and I'm sorry. And those are the sort of things that well-mannered children know, and leaders need to apply the lessons. You went through a number of the areas that are very important. You skipped the part about taking a nap and having cookies in the afternoon. But I would, all these little things that you learn in kindergarten can be important, and they can be life lessons. And so the basic things you learn about how to treat other people and how you should act, you really should have learned when you were in kindergarten. And if you think back to that, just some of those very basic ways of dealing with people, treating people, the golden rule certainly applies, can come in handy as a leader. There's nothing you should do that would be in opposition to those things you learned when you were a young person.
Yeah, I think the take a nap and eat cookies would translate into today would be life balance, and I think I think with our generation, balance was a problem, and I think I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming up, I think they're really looking for a better life balance than maybe we had. And we should appreciate that.
Yeah, it's important. When I was new in the military, I went to a retirement ceremony. I was a captain, and if you're familiar with the military ranks for officers, after captain is major, then lieutenant colonel, then colonel, and sometimes the most senior person you ever get to know is a colonel. And I went to a colonel's retirement on my first base, and this particular colonel, his family was there, and he started bemoaning the fact that he had worked so hard and he missed certain things in his children's life or his wife's life. And I was thinking, okay, I don't respect you for that. Don't apologize now. You made decisions at the time. And I told my subordinates that if they have something going on, if it's going on in a child's life, unless they really can't balance the items going on at work around that, I expect them to enjoy that with their child, with their family. It only happens one time. Whatever your children are doing, they're only going to do one time that one day. You're either a part of it or you're not. When you're on your deathbed, I don't think many people are going to regret the fact that they didn't work until 10 o'clock one night, but they are going to regret if they missed things going on in their families' lives. So when I've been in charge of things, if someone said, can I take off to do so-and-so, my answer 100% of the time is yes. Sometimes I'll say, you've got this important project, be sure you're able to accomplish it in the timely manner, but by all means, be with your family when you've got that important thing going on. So it's a matter of priorities, and the number one priority should be a person's family. For a religious person, it's their relationship with the Lord, whatever's important to you. But Randy, you said it right. It's a matter of balance, and people need to have balance in their lives. It's if you just work all the time, then you're not doing things right, and you're not going to be as effective at work, and you're not going to be a good leader. One of the keys to leadership is the example you set. And so if you tell people, by all means, I want you to take the time to do this, but they see that you're not doing that, then they think, okay, the person's telling me one thing but doing another, and so which one do I follow? What he or she says or what he or she does? And we don't need to create that sort of dilemma.
No, totally agree. I think it's really, really important. I know you faced many situations in your life that probably have tested you and really helped shape who you've become as a person and as a leader. Would you mind sharing a couple of those and how it's impacted you and who you have become today?
I would say the number one quality leading up to that, how you handle the situations that are a special test, are knowing yourself and being true to yourself. John McCain was a Navy pilot who was shot down, and he was a prisoner of war in North Vietnam for a number of years. He was tortured horribly, along with his colleagues who were prisoners. One day he was told, hey, if you'll make this statement against the United States, then we'll quit torturing you, we'll be good to you, and no one's going to know that you did this deal with us. And McCain refused to do it. And so they repeated the offer. If you do this, we'll quit torturing you. No one's going to know that we had this deal with you. And McCain's response was 3 words: I will know. And that's what a person needs to understand. You're not going to fool yourself. If you take advantage of a situation, if you take shortcuts, if you don't do things the right way, if you don't accept responsibility, then you're going to know that. And it's either going to be something at the top of your mind and you were deliberately deceptive, or it's going to be something that'll come back to haunt you. So you will know. When I was a senior JAG in the Pentagon, we had the what was known as enhanced interrogation techniques. Abu Ghraib and torture had come up, and there were several political leaders in the Pentagon and in the administration who did not want the senior JAGs to testify. But when we were called by congressional committees, if they asked us, what's the administration policy, we would tell them. But when we got the question, what is your personal opinion of something, we told them that too. And we had several consultations with very senior members of the administration at the cabinet level in 2 cases. And the senior JAGs from all the services, this wasn't just me, met with people who were very unhappy that we had said something that went against administration policy. And so part of it is we were thinking, okay, we've made the senior rank in the JAG Corps. What can you do to us? But the main point was we did what we believed was right. We were true to ourselves. We had taken an oath. The oath of office for a military officer is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. The President of the United States is the Commander-in-Chief, and we're loyal to all legitimate orders from the President. We respect the President based on the office that the President holds. But our oath is to the Constitution, not to an individual, and not to the administration in power. So, again, we were second guessed by a lot of people, frankly, with whom I have very little respect, for taking positions that were contrary to the administration views on those. But I always felt like it was fairly easy to do because we were true to ourselves and to our oath of office, which was to the Constitution of the United States.
Well, we sure appreciate that, especially today, because I think we're seeing so much of that not happening, frankly. I mean, we're seeing people that, profess that they believe in the Constitution, but, their loyalties may lie in other places oftentimes, whether it's a position or a party or whatever. And so I know that was a difficult situation for you to maneuver through, but I know it was an easy decision for you because of who you are.
Well, and that's the important thing. If you're true to yourself, if you have values, then the decisions really won't be that hard. As you were asking me the question, and I was thinking through it, those sort of decisions, even though some other people might have taken a different route, I've found them to be not so difficult because I would have had a hard time not doing what I believed was the right thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. So, we're kind of wrapping up here today, but I wanted to finish up with, you've had some extensive experience in your life, and for the emerging leader, our next generation, or somebody that may have just gotten their first managerial or leadership job, and they're looking to their future, what takeaways would you share with them from what you've learned to become a better leader in the future?
I would begin by saying lead by example. One of the quotes I like was from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "What you do speaks so loudly I cannot hear what you are saying." So if there's a difference between what you tell people to do or what you say and what you actually do, then people are going to look at you as a failure as a leader. You have to be true to yourself. We talked about communications earlier. Communications are critically important. You do need to be consistent, but the critical thing, Randy, to your point, I would say is know yourself and be true to yourself.
Good thoughts. Well, Jack, thanks so much for being with us today on the Leadership Crucible. I mean, thanks for taking your time and sharing, a wealth of information with us today. And I know that you will help future leaders emerge in the future as you're doing at the ABA right now. And we wish you the best and look forward to having you on again.
Well, thank you, Chief Brugman. I appreciate what you've done through your life. And this series has an apt name as Crucible because that tells a story in and of itself. So it was an honor to be invited and my pleasure to participate with you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Visit us at theleadershipcruciblepodcast.com and join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.